Good morning, shalom, I guess. First of all, I want to thank Dana because of such amazing presentation. And overall, because of this invitation, it's the first time that I am presenting in Israel. I have been here many times because I have beloved friends living in Israel, so it's not my first time. As I think that before to start with my presentation, I would like to give you some warnings because first of all, as you heard, my background is sociology and anthropology, so sometimes we tend to be so abstract that even we don't understand ourselves. So I hope you understand me today. And the second thing that you have to bear in mind is that I am from Ecuador, so my accent sometimes is quite strong. So if you don't understand any word, you can ask Dana. I think that she understands me a little bit. So let me tell you how this presentation got a shape. Dana asked me, I think that even 2 years ago, if I would like to come here, and I immediately say yes. I was very touched, and I want to thank all the people from the Shapiro Center for this great invitation. I didn't know how to do it. I was struggling a lot with my personal story related to disability. And I decided to do some kind of research. I will tell you during my presentation about that. But it was only, like I think 1 month ago, I went to cut my hair. And you know, in Amsterdam, you have all these crazy places where you can find people who cut hair, but at the same time, they are philosophers. And so I was waiting for the person to come to cut my hair, and I found a book on the table of the hair salon, and it was the Symposium of Socrates. And sorry, it's Socrates, right? Plate. And when I started reading again, I thought, well, this is strange because I have been thinking about the power of love in my life regarding my siblings. And I opened the book and I started reading again the book, and I was thinking, oh, this is strange because I would like to share with you just one part of the paragraph that it really caught my attention. And here is Eryximachus talking to his friends and saying, today let us have conversation instead, and if you will allow me, I will tell you what sort of conversation. For often Phaedrus says to me, Eryximachus, in an indignant tone, what a strange thing it is, Eryximachus, that whereas other gods have poems and hymns made in their honor, the great and glorious God, love, has no encomiast among all the poets who are so many. What is still more extraordinary, I have met with a philosophical work in which the utility of salt has been made the theme of an eloquent discourse, and many other like things have had a like honor upon them. Only to think that there should have been an eager interest created about them, and yet that to this day no one has ever dared worthily to him love praises. So entirely has this great deity been neglected. So I want to offer him a contribution. Also, I think that at the present moment, we who are here cannot do better than honor the God love. If you agree with me, there will be no lack of conversation, for I mean to propose that each of us, in turn, going from left to right, shall make a speech in honor of love. I wanted today to take the invitation extended by Plato in his beautiful dramatic dialogue, The Symposium, to talk and honor the God love. Nevertheless, this time I would like to honor him by sharing the voice of siblings of people who have been labeled as disabled. Another warning that I have to give you is that sometimes I cry when I present. So if I cry, please bear with me that. I was born in Ecuador into a family with 3 brothers with multiple disabilities and 2 sisters, one of whom faces also some neurological difficulties. After the death of my young brother, I have witnessed the physical deterioration of my 2 older brothers and my mother. We have done everything possible and also sometimes the impossible, as resources are always lacking, to support them. This natural process of the body, as we all know, usually happens to human beings, and we should all be used to it. However, somehow, in the last couple of years, the condition of my siblings has provoked in me a profound inner questioning to understand why we, families, friends, would like people labeled as disabled like my brothers and my sister to continue living, and what the role of siblings in that process might be. My constant search to integrate the presence of my siblings in my life led me to a recent dialogue with 5 other sisters of persons with intellectual disability in the Netherlands. As Ereximachus did, I proposed to them that we dedicate some time to discuss our relation to our siblings and the God love. We met in cafes and had long conversations. We sometimes cried and more often laughed. We shared pictures and described anecdotes. We rediscovered the meaning of siblinghood, as one of them told me. And finally, we all share a meal in order to honor the love we all have, each in our own way, for our disabled siblings. So the pictures that you will see in the, I don't know, is that connected? How do I make the, sorry. So the pictures that you will see in my presentation are pictures that these 5 sisters share with me, and also you will see some photos of my own brothers. This presentation is my way of sharing with you all at least some of the thoughts shared by these sisters and myself regarding why we want to keep disability alive. In order to do so, I wanted to bring together the dialogue between each of our voices, that of the sisters, and that of the researchers and academics in different fields. As a methodological note, let me explain that the fact that there were only sisters participating in these conversations didn't respond to a criteria imposed by me. It simply happened. I wanted to come here accompanied by real voices, and there was little time and few resources to make this sort of study methodologically less biased. So please bear with me regarding all the limitations which this little study could present, and simply take home with you the relevance of our stories and the value of our family lives. So why love, you might be wondering. And after receiving the invitation to participate in the Disability Studies Conference organized by Beit Isi Shapiro, whose topic for this year is Unity and Diversity in Action, it took me a few months before finding the subject I thought could make possible for me as a researcher, but overall as a sister, to present these 2 concepts, unity and diversity. My mind immediately went this way, unearthing stories related in various ways with disability. So it went from St. Francis of Assisi, who thought that he found unity by embracing the body of disabled people, more specifically of people affected by leprosy, and who envisioned that the whole humanity, would one day live as brothers and sisters if just they embraced love. To the amazing tale of love between the siblings Vincent and Theo van Gogh, that was profoundly marked by the disability of Vincent. But this search only stopped finally here, at this photo, at this drawing, that my younger brother Marco made for me last year, and that says, "I love you, Bachita." They call me Bachita. So he explained to me that the drawing represents the two of us bonded by love. As you can see, it's the two of us bonded by love. And this simple and touching gesture generated in me questions that were, from that moment, impossible to respond by myself. What exactly does that bond represent? How was that bond constructed? Was it because of the nature of siblinghood, the nature of disability, or was it something else? Does that bond teach us something valuable? Do my siblings grow in a human internal sense as much as I do on account of that bond? Could this bond teach something valuable to the world? Thus, I decided to search for answers to these questions together with my 5 interlocutors, Jana, Maike, Hannah, Yoshi, and Renska. And I have to thank them all, because without them, this paper wouldn't have been possible for me to write. It is quite evident that in times when medical, financial, political, and societal issues appear to take over the debate regarding disability, academics, practitioners, policymakers, and researchers seem to forget what the narratives of disabled people, as of any human being, are in the end made of and claim for: love. Love itself, and especially in the field of disability, has been avoided. Perhaps, as Lindholm remarks, ethnographers have been far more comfortable writing about cannibalism and incest than about love. The main reason is perhaps, as Joshi, one of my interlocutors, whose brother has a severe disability, explains, that love is the most important element in our lives, but impossible to measure or to even define. Or as Professor van der Heest will say, love resists definition and escapes from the nets of scientists who want to capture it in their studies. And yet, looking back, it seems as if the initial work of Malinowski, Mead, and Evans Pritchard on love, passion, and relationships is paying back. And little by little, the ethnographer's awareness of her own emotional experience in fieldwork made an openness to the emotional world of the other unavoidable. Yet, somehow love is not recognized as a relevant and even as an urgent matter to be researched in the field of disability. Not to mention the scarce attention that is given to the essential role that love plays in the world-making of siblings of disabled people. Indeed, the emphasis placed with such intensity on the medical and psychological aspects of brothers and sisters of disabled people by researchers seems to forget that sibling relationships can be one of the most intimate, enduring, troubling, and conflictual relationships that we may experience in our lives. And for that reason, impossible to be captured by linear or single disciplinary explanations. The very definition of siblinghood is complex and problematic. Even more complex and problematic is sibling love. We need then to begin by asking, who is a sibling? Especially nowadays when family is an expanded and always changeable definition. Perlam, in Himsel's book, says that the word sibling comes from the Middle English word sib, that could be defined both as a noun and as an adjective. As a noun, it means related, akin, the offspring of the same parents. As an adjective, intimate, congenial. So the complexity, Hindle says, is also semantic. Or as Renska, another of my interlocutors who has a blind brother, defines a sibling as somebody who is there for the other, for her brother or sister, to take care of each other's life, to cry, to laugh, or just to share, but even for fighting. So listening to the conversations between my interlocutors, words like care, respect, anger, disappointment, distance, closeness, appear as synonyms of sibling. As Flannery explains, in sibling love, intense levels of aversion and pleasure coexist. In my own case, my relationship with my sister Miriam, for instance, has always been one of acceptance and rejection, and I cannot remember when that started. It didn't happen as in Barth's account of romantic love, under the form of a scene whose narration is, we meet and then. No, with my sister it has rather been, we found ourselves there and then, or we were always already together and then, or even we both always return and then. In this sense, I could easily say that a sibling is somebody who is always already there and then. This is a common expression I found in the narrative of my friends now, and one that got me into this presentation. They constantly repeat that a sibling is somebody who will make sure that a disabled brother or sister is fine, and that nothing will harm them or will make them suffer. In other words, a sibling is one who is always there and then. For me, this was an eye-opener that had never crossed my mind. For in previous analyses I did about siblinghood and disability, I discovered myself performing roles, like the role of a sister, a father, a friend, a mother, and a carer. Such as I recognize in the dialogues I initiated with other sisters. I was never conscious of the tremendous role we play in preserving disability, as if we, the siblings of disabled people, became a kind of silent, intimate activists for the conservation of disability. And here, I believe, lies a relevant contribution from siblings for a deeper understanding of the meaning of unity and diversity. So allow me to explain this in detail. Rosemary Garland Thompson defines disability as perhaps the essential characteristic of being human. Her argument claims for the recognition that disability as a witness of our own susceptibility or receptiveness to being shaped by the particular journey through the world that we call our life. If this is right, as Garland Thompson states, there are many more reasons from a bioethical perspective to conserve disability than reasons to get rid of it altogether. Here, I would like also to use the verb conserve, as Rosemary Garland Thompson does, which she underlines as meaning to maintain a person or a thing in continuous existence, to keep alive, existing or flourishing, to preserve intact. And these are precisely actions that are present everywhere in the stories I share with you today. As in the words of Mikey and Yona, who told me about the time when her sister Svea was operated in order to prevent the progress of a severe scoliosis. They explained how difficult that moment was, but also how proud they were when they saw their sister recovering well, and generally being alive and kicking. Or when Renska said how much she would be willing to give in exchange to see her brother accepting who he is, and that he is doing well despite the pain and the emotional difficulties he faces. Or like Hannah, who has a brother with some cognitive impairment, and yet states that she wouldn't by any means want a different brother, that he is as he is, and that this is fine. Which takes me back to my initial question. Why do us, siblings, want to conserve disability? Why do we want to continue supporting our siblings even after our parents are gone? Especially considering how many studies emphasize the burden implied by disability. I am tempted to answer immediately by saying that the main reason is love. Yet, I think that the process to arrive at this answer is more complex than just supposing that love is a constant that takes many different forms and nuances. For which reason, I would like to use the approach taken by Mary Garland Thompson. According to her, disability is a source, and not a mere deficit or burden. As such, it should be analyzed as a narrative resource, as an epistemic resource, and even as a moral resource. As such, being a resource on the basis of its contribution and value, its protection and conservation should be a logical consequence. As a vivid narrative resource, disability allows for a continuous encounter with characters and voices, even through history. So let's look back, for example, to the story of the elephant man, who didn't only serve as a sort of medical guinea pig, but also as a spectacle for the society. The thousands of silent stories of disabled people killed during the Second World War, during the implementation of eugenic laws, or even nowadays in many institutions in the name of normality and population control. These all were narratives that, as Arthur Frank asserts, are opportunities to develop voice, to fight against the disqualification by society, and to create bonds with different human beings by sharing vulnerability and mortality. Disability, then, helps us to create self-stories. To interview Yona and Mikey, two sisters of Svea, offered me the possibility of understanding this clearly enough. Despite their common bond with their sister, their personal tales with Svea are of different shades. Mike, for instance, is more concentrated on making sure that her sister is physically and emotionally fine, while Yona is very much into the idea of having fun and enjoying life with her sister. As she puts it, I love to spend a Friday night with Svea, to bring her mattress downstairs. She has a special mattress due to her back problems. We watch a movie and enjoy the time together. It is really fun. Creating the stories of self and finding allies through them not only allows cultural work that in cases like well-known disabled people such as Stephen Hawking are visible enough. It also teaches us about the becoming disabled of all human beings. As Arthur Frank argues, sooner or later we all become a wounded storyteller. And it is through such narratives that love somehow, and in different forms, makes an appearance and bonds the siblings amongst themselves and amongst others in a kind of constellation. I had the opportunity to listen to Renska and Steve, her brother, separately. She openly explained about his attempts to commit suicide. He did it vaguely, yet they talk about their mutual love and how they felt it as real in different moments when an attempt has happened. I remember Renska said, when he was in hospital and all of us were around him, each of us told him how important he was for us, how much he meant in our lives, and how much we each loved him. That was a very special moment, and we all knew we loved each other. Steve, for his part, remembered one of those episodes when, being in hospital, he received a letter and a cassette from his sister Renska with a song about being a brother. This was very important to me, he said. I knew then that my sister loved me very much. So I was very lucky to share all these narratives with all these 5 girls who are now my friends. So epistemologically, disability is also a resource. Narratives of disability transmit knowledge. They create knowledge, and they capture knowledge. As Garland Thompson says, our bodily form, function, comportment, perceptual apprehension, and way of mind shape how we understand our world. Yet, the problem is that somehow the knowledge produced by disability has been considered as a subaltern knowledge and as a mere experience, consequently devaluing the knowledge offered by such an experience. Scully calls this embodied cognition. The work of Henry Nouwen brings with examples of this kind. Nouwen, a Dutch priest and theologian, transformed Adam, the young man with severe impairment of whom he became a carer at the Daybreak Center, part of a large community in Canada, into his master. Adam's knowledge then transformed the life of Nouwen himself as that of the hundreds of people who came to know them. For instance, an ill-rich lady from New York who was invited by Nouwen to have dinner with him and Adam. After 3 hours of silent communication with Adam, Nouwen said she learned something different about her own life. In fact, we learn because we are all wounded healers. That is what Nouwen concludes. As such, what siblings of disabled people learn about themselves, about their siblings, and about life in general is tremendous. Knowledge and narrative are about text and context. And in the context of siblinghood, we learn to love but also to hate each other. We learn that we live in the process of learning how to be siblings. And that is an endless process, just as Hannah illustrates. I am very proud of my brother. I love him, of course. But I also learn about how to deal with myself when I encounter difficult situations. Situations where he is involved or where someone else is involved. Of course, I always learn. Personally, I believe this happens because in many cases, we, siblings, have to struggle with ourselves in order to understand what our position in life might be, who we are, and who they, our siblings, are. However, we are not the only ones who learn through disability. Through our siblings' relationships, other people also learn about life and about their own potentials. Yoshi shares her multiple encounters with friends who have changed their perspective of life on the basis of their acquaintance of her brother Mace. I remember she said having a friend who was even a supporter of abortion in case of detecting impairment during the period of pregnancy. However, after she met Mace, I believe something changed. She told me that she didn't know how much people could learn while sharing with disabled people. And I truly believe many of my friends' ideas about disability have changed because of Mace, my brother. Finally, as an ethical resource, disability furnishes the basis for bonds in which love occupies a critical position. My initial question about why as siblings, and not only our parents, want to continue supporting our disabled brothers and sisters, despite the negative and pessimistic view of disability which is socially so widespread, returns once again. My interlocutors have responded that the only reason for playing the role is ultimately love. Overcoming medical, economic, and social problems is possible only by loving our siblings. Not even the judicial pressure imposed by the responsibility of being blood-related is stronger than love. For instance, Hannah says, I will always be there for him, for my brother. Is it not about me being responsible for my brother? He's my brother, and this is essentially the ultimate reason for accompanying him always. Examples regarding the trilogy ethics, love, disability are common. A public case that clearly gets the idea across is that of Emily Rapp. Her son died when he was 3 years old, after going through the impact of the Tay-Sachs syndrome. As the article published in the Times in March 2013 states about her, Rapp is the parent who most moms and dads hope they never become. Tay-Sachs disease brings blindness and seizures and paralysis before it kills children, typically before their third birthday. However, when asked about her experience, Rapp says, "It was agony and ecstasy, and the extremes of those experiences. It is agonizing to watch your kids suffer and lose them. The ecstasy comes from the fact that he was still my kid, and I love him. When he died, I was glad he wasn't suffering anymore. I was relieved, which was agonizing because he wasn't here anymore, but a little bit of ecstasy because he was free. However, I would give up all this stuff if I could have my kid back." This agony and ecstasy is what Jonah, Renske, Joshi, Mike, and Han experience. And it is also what I experience with my brothers and sisters. In my conversation with my fellow sisters, issues about fears regarding the future and the deterioration of our siblings' bodies were mentioned many times. We struggle with the idea of them being alive, with pain and perhaps without support, while we also struggle with the very idea of our lives without them. And I have to jump, like I have to skip 2 pages, I think, because I have only 2 minutes. And the only thing then, because I have 2 minutes, I would like to say that as Garvan explains, disability gives us, as siblings, I guess, the opportunity profoundly to love another human being. I think that I would like to finish my presentation saying that I would like to invite you to understand the topic of siblinghood in disability, not only in relation to us, the literal siblings, but also as a means to recover the very meaning of brotherhood and sisterhood in the wide world, and to make evident its enormous potential to bring about change. Perhaps it's in the way mentioned in relation to St. Francis, who located brotherhood in the embrace of the so-called lepers. My call concerns the possibility of a wide recovery of kinship through the experience of disability on the basis of that stupid thing called love. And before to finish, I just would like to tell you that my message in this presentation was not the romantic idea, it was not about the romantic idea of love. It was all the contrary, the opposite. The love that we experience as siblings, and maybe the parents also will say that, is I think that is a continuous process of understanding ourselves. And in this understanding ourselves, we always find contradictions. So it's not like pictures and advertisements that announce that the only thing that will help us to live is love. It could be true, but then we need to understand what kind of love are we talking about. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation.